Welcome to Flip the Table, where we flip the lies that you've believed into truth you can actually lead from and to live from. I'm Mark Gordon.
Hey everyone, and I'm Chris. And today we're going to get really real about something that shows up in leadership a lot, more often than we think. And it shows up in marriage and also in our parenting. When our help actually feels like control.
Yeah, this is the one. This one might sting a little bit, Chris, because most of us genuinely mean well. We jump in to help, to fix, to protect. But what we think is love sometimes lands like pressure or manipulation. I know that's happened to me even in my parenting skills. Sometimes it feels a little more like it's interference.
Absolutely. We like to call it help, but it
Yeah,
can sound more like you're just not doing it right. For a quick example, is I'm a fixer.
yeah,
And, sometimes I come across trying to fix things, but I actually just end up making them worse. And I said, and if you want to know the truth about it, just ask my wife.
yeah, exactly. So today we're going to flip the table on the lie that kind of helps, you know, helping us always equate loving, like help doesn't always equate loving, sorry. And talk about the healthy, empowering help and what that looks like. And so we want to just jump into this today. And so let's start right here. We gotta name the pattern, right? So help's a beautiful thing, and I just want to say that. And when it's offered from humility and a good place, that's great. But when it's rooted in fear or insecurity or control, it kind of shifts from empowerment to interference. And often, I think our help is driven from our own insecurities or from our own sense of maybe thinking too much of ourselves, thinking that self kind of focus. And that's when it gets kind of tough.
Yeah, that's a huge distinction. I mean, I've seen that with leaders who micromanage. Micromanage is an
Totally.
epidemic still to this day. But when I've seen with leaders who micromanage for the sake of excellence, it sounds noble. It's
Yeah.
yeah, it sounds great, but underneath, they're just afraid of losing control.
Yeah, control is a big thing, and we may want to do a podcast just on that subject soon, because that is a big thing. I think that control always comes out of insecurity, and so that's a really good observation. So that's where we have to be honest with ourselves. There's a fine line between helping someone grow and not trusting them to handle something or handle it. Our own insecurity becomes the measuring stick for other people, like when we are operating out of fear instead of faith, we start to see and project onto others what maybe we're feeling. So here's the truth: uninvited help often communicates, "I don't trust you to figure it out on your own." Uh, there's a book called Bursting the Bubble, and it talks about the law of permission, where only what somebody has given you permission to say will be heard. And I kind of like that, Chris. I think that's an interesting observation. It's like we like to offer our fixes, but if it hasn't been invited, if we haven't been asked to hold somebody accountable or to help, then we really need to be careful there.
Yeah, that's strong, Mark. And it's not just in leadership, it's in families too.
Mm-hmm.
I've been on both sides of it, type of a thing, whether it's a leader at work or a husband, father at home. Being the helper and the one that who feels, and then being the helper and then by the one who feels being smothered by it.
Right.
Um, I can give you a couple of quick examples. Um, this is, I think, normal in any marriage, right? Your wife has a bad day, there's something that's gone on, and so on and so forth, and she wants to unload. And so Lori will
Mm-hmm.
come and unload on me the thing. And while she's unloading, the only thing that I'm thinking and processing is,
Yeah.
I'm going to beat that guy up. I'm going to go and do this. I'm going to fix this. I'm going to fix this. And I'm thinking of the entire process of how I'm going to take it and get rid of it for her so that she
Or
doesn't.
how you would do it, right?
That's what I'm saying. How I'm going
Yeah.
to do it. Like I'm going to fix it and everything. And all she wants from me is to listen to what had happened, but I feel like I've got to fix it, and then the same thing happened at work.
Yeah.
Last year was a great example in the new role that I have. There was a lot going on. We were pioneering a whole new world in what we were doing in the tech space and everything like that. And I had a small team that I was working alongside of.
Mhm.
And I just took a year of fixing everything and doing everything. My role was to handle the strategic aspect and make sure that we were executing on it. But
Yeah.
someone wasn't doing something over here, or someone wasn't doing something right over there. And so I just jumped in and I said, let me fix it. Let me fix it. Guess what happened, Mark? I smothered them to the
Yeah.
point now that when the next time that conflict or the next time that problem came up, even though we did the problem, they had
Yeah.
no idea how to fix it. They had no idea how to do it.
Exactly.
And in the end, I helped nobody. I burnt out,
Yeah.
and they left stranded from day one on what to do. And all that, I'll just end on this. All that ends on one factor: trust.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so true. And I think because when I think some of the root of this is when people struggle, it triggers our own fear of failure, or we feel like we've lost, or that we're going to be rejected if we don't have all the answers. And sometimes it's just because of the chaos of the situation. But I think we step in to fix them instead of facing what their struggle stirs up in us. So rather than, us dealing with what's going on in us, we kind of try to fix their situation so we don't have to deal with our own stuff. And so I think that sometimes is why that happens, for sure. So um,
We
yeah,
end up not, we end up in good intentions, we
yeah,
end up causing a lot of the times more grief. And you and
right,
I know that, part of what we're on this planet to do is to empower people,
right,
to reveal the
exactly,
value that they possess. And in that,
right,
when we smother based on a lack of trust or whatever the thing like
yeah,
that is, it just ensues more chaos. And so I
yeah,
think, like you said, I think we need to, the intention I feel is always good in some way. It's
yeah.
rooted in good, but it twists real quick.
Yeah, but I had to learn that like my desire to help was sometimes more about my discomfort with their struggle than it was, anything else. It's that subtle need to manage their outcomes so that I can feel at peace, right? Or worse, I really struggled with this, Chris, in early years of leadership, and that was the need to be needed.
Yeah.
If I had the solution, it meant that I was needed, and that's an ego piece, that's really struck in me a chord because and that's what I mean. It came out of that fear of failure. It wasn't because I was conscious of it. It was just I truly desired to help, but I couldn't. And so I think this. I think if we want to grow, we have to ask this question: am I helping them because they need it, or because I need to feel needed? I think that's
Yeah.
a really good way to do that. So, also I often say you can't see what you don't possess, both negative and positive, right? So often when we see something that is off in others, it's a reflection of what we think is off in us, but we dare not admit it. So I think a lot of times, I always say that if you can't, if you see it, you possess it. So that's why, by the way, a lot of times somebody will accuse something of accuse you of something, and it's actually not anything to do with anything you did. It's but something that they're seeing. And so then they project it onto you. So I think the help works in the same way. Sometimes when we feel like we need help, we'll try to help others out of that need to be needed instead of just authentically helping because we care. And it's a very subtle line because I think most of us help because we really care. I'm not saying we don't care, but it's a difficult one.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that leads us to the crux of what this podcast is about, Mark. So let's
Yeah.
let's get ready to flip the table on this one.
All
Let's
right.
start. What is the big the big hairy lie here, the big lie at the
Yeah.
end of the day. What is it?
Well, I think the foundational lie is if I don't help, I'm failing them or I'm
Mm.
failing myself. So, or if I don't win, I will lose. There's a mindset, that if I can't fix this, then I've lost, that I'm not going to be needed. It sounds compassionate, but it's often about control, not care. So when we believe the lie, it's not about them anymore. It's not because we're trying to help them. It's because we think we failed if we don't. That's where that obligation feeling comes in, that emotion of obligation sometimes. Well, I should be helping. You challenged me on this one time, Chris, because I would say yes to everybody that needed help moving. And of course, I was pastoring a church at the time. There was a lot of people asking to help. And you
Yeah.
said, why are you there, Mark? Why aren't you letting the young guys step up and do it? Well, because they need my help. Nobody showed up, or they won't show up. You were so right. It wasn't really about me feeling a desire to go and help move. I didn't want to. In fact, many times I resented it because I felt obligated to because I was the pastor, and I had to learn that that was not healthy for me or for them. I was
Yeah.
violating relational things because of that.
Well, you've heard me say this many, many times. I say this all over the place. Um, it's easy to say yes, but it takes courage to say no, in terms
Exactly.
of the yes, people pleasing, yes, I can do. And with
Yeah.
regards to this big lie that you just talked about,
Yeah.
if I don't help, I'm failing them, or if I don't win, I lose. This is a big one for leaders and for parents too.
Yeah, for
Speaking to
sure.
parents, we just end up always telling ourselves, because we're so hard on ourselves a lot of time, that I'm just being responsible. It's
Right.
it's really I'm just being responsible, Mark.
Yeah. And that's part of the lie, I guess. We're justifying. I always tell people if you have to justify, you already know you're in trouble. So just there's a thought for you. So yeah, responsibility doesn't mean rescuing. The the truth is this, and this is a quote you can make a note of. Real love empowers, control protects my comfort. Love protects their growth. So I'm going to say that
Mm,
again. Real love empowers, right? So that means control protects my comfort and love protects their growth. So that's an indicator for you. If you're not sure, am I slipping off is this true health, authentic health? Well, if you remember that if you're doing something out of love, it protects them, it protects their growth, it protects their personhood. But if it's control because you want to feel comfortable or you don't feel comfortable with their discomfort, then that's not help. That's control. And so we might rush in to help. We can accidentally actually short circuit someone's process. We remove the tension that's supposed to build their strength. Tension is not always bad, it can be actually a very positive motivator, right? And so we come to the rescue, but then, like you said earlier, then they don't know, they don't grow, and they don't learn, and they the next time they need us again and again and again, and we actually create weakness instead of strength.
So, Mark, are you saying then that our quick fixes can actually stunt development?
Yes, absolutely.
I guess that's probably relevant whether it's with a team member or even your teenager, right?
Exactly. Because if we don't let them struggle, I mean, think about it, Chris. You and I, uh, we've had struggles in our life, but those struggles developed our character. I always say this. I say, the struggle does not develop my character, but it reveals my character. So I
Yeah.
know what to work on. So if I'm struggling and I have to, call out for help and I can't do anything on my own because I've always had it handed to me, I don't actually grow to the place that I can work through problems and struggles. And what we do is we create weakness and dependence that is not healthy. We don't empower decision making or good decision making, whether it's a parent or a team member. It's the same principle, right? Now that doesn't mean we abandon them. We want to walk with them and stand with them. But I've learned this. God often Let's tension stay long enough to form character or to reveal character. But when we step in too fast, we become the substitute savior.
Mm,
And
yeah.
that's not our role. That's not our role, Chris.
Yeah, that one hits hard. I mean, I've done that, and again, going
All the
back to the
time.
early statement of being a fixer, and even helping out of compassion, but realized later I was really actually just robbing someone of the chance to
Right.
grow resilience. And what I kind of learned, this is a hard one I had to learn, but I've seen how successful it is, and it's going to sound harsh,
Yeah.
but nowadays a lot of times I will, I'll do that old adage. Sometimes, you got to let a few eggs get broken or
Yeah.
cracked in order for you to make an omelet.
Yeah.
I know there's variations of that, but you got to
Yeah.
you got to break a few
Right.
eggs, right? And
Yeah.
sometimes it's difficult. I remember growing up, or not growing up, my kids growing up, and sometimes just having to let them, you know, get
Fail
into the
forward.
situation, right?
Yeah.
And then that way, instead of just, and in this today, ooh, here's a little loved one, hey, that everybody's gonna love this generation with the gentleness that goes on there. We're stripping resilience
Yes.
away from the growing process, the learning process. And we're not, by the way, if
True.
the parents are looking at me going, I'm gonna throw eggs at you, you're gonna be an omelet here in a minute, Chris. This isn't about you doing it wrong. What I want to
No.
make the thing is that
Yeah.
we have this incredible desire to make sure that we keep those around us that we love safe and
Right.
protected and with the best chances to win. And sometimes we forget that resilience is one of the strongest things to help them learn.
Right. Yeah, because they learn to bounce back. And I really think that's important and something to really look at. So here's another truth for you. When help becomes control, it damages trust. You alluded to it earlier.
Yeah.
People stop being honest because they're afraid of disappointing you.
Ooh,
I've experienced that mistake firsthand, even with my own kids. It's like if you help and that help becomes control, then you take away their decision making because they're fearful of letting you down. And what we need, I'm not, listen, there's a difference between abandonment and empowerment.
yeah.
I'm not talking about it abandoning our kids or abandoning our team or leaving them to their own devices. I'm saying let them work the problem to the end and be standing there cheering them on while they do it. It's not a case of abandonment at all.
No. And so the cycle begins and continues to go round and round. They
Yeah,
hide, we push harder, and ultimately the relationship suffocates.
exactly. We violate every relational principle that there is. And so that's the moment to stop and ask, am I managing outcomes or mentoring growth?
Mm,
That's a very practical tool, right? Just,
yeah.
am I managing outcomes? So I'm trying to make sure that everything works out nice for them. Or am I actually mentoring growth? You got to let them fall, on their face a few times. If it's a team member, if it's an organization, if it's a church, if it's a family, you got to let them build that resiliency, and then even ask them after, well, what do you think you could have done different? But you have to ask yourself, am I managing outcomes because of my own insecurity, because I'm trying to control, or am I mentoring growth? And so, yeah, I might have the answer, but it's not for me to give it too quickly, especially if I
Correct.
haven't been asked.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. So let's talk practical for a moment, because I think, people might be asking, well, how do we help without taking over? Like, how do we do what we're just talked about? Well, the tool I gave you is one way, but I think that there maybe people are kind of wondering, right?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of us don't even realize we're doing it, right? We're taking over, we're controlling the situation. As I mentioned earlier, I'm a bit of a doer, like I'm a fixer,
Yeah,
I'm a doer.
right,
So this sure has caused some trouble in the past, right? Like that,
right,
because you don't let that room to breathe, if I can use
right.
that.
Well, especially when you're so good at it, Chris, like
There you
like you always say, just I'm great. Just ask anybody, or just ask me and I'll tell you how great I am. So,
It's like, how do you tell there's a pilot in the room? Because
yeah.
he'll tell you.
Okay, so here's five simple shifts that make all the difference. Okay, here's some shifts that you can make to make sure your help's authentic. Number one, ask before you advise. Don't assume help is wanted. Say, would you like input, or do you just need me to listen? Right. So respecting autonomy builds trust. It's again back to that law of permission, right? So you want to build that autonomy. You want to be able to just ask first. And I learned this the hard way in my own family. That the kids would jump into the car after high school, and I'd drive them home or whatever, and I'd start hearing about all the friend drama. And of course, I'm the relationship expert, right? So I start fixing everything and do my thing. And one day, one of my kids just kind of yelled and said, "Stop! I'm your daughter. I know what I need to do. I just want to vent." So
Yeah.
I learned that lesson right there, right?
Yeah. Well, the law of permission, I mean, I mentioned it earlier, right?
Yeah,
It's a good law to abide by, because
yeah,
most people don't, and especially in the situation, don't want to be rescued necessarily. They just want
right.
to be heard. And you heard me talk about that with Lori and the way have
Yeah,
handled things over the years, right?
yeah, that's so good. People want to be heard. They don't want to be
Yes.
fixed. I
All right,
always tell
number
people,
two.
yeah. So number two is define what's yours and what's theirs, right? So clarity is kindness. Don't carry what's not yours to fix. Two sides of the same coin here. One is in my growth as a leader. There's two sides of the same coin that I learned the hard way, but it's been a valuable lesson for me. Number one, the first side of the coin is I started taking responsibility for me, for my behavior, my decisions, who I was. I started taking responsibility for what I could control, not what others could control, right? The second side of that coin is connected to that is I stopped taking responsibility for other people's things, their behavior, what they control. I had to stop taking responsibility for them in that way. So that clarity created kindness in the people in my team, in my family, because I was able to know what to take responsibility for and what not to.
Yeah, yeah. Like leadership, you've said this many, many times, and I think it's part of your whole DNA of the curriculum you have and everything, is that it's like leadership boundaries, like the leadership
Yeah,
boundaries,
yeah,
you own your responsibility, but you don't own their process.
yes, exactly. Yeah, that's really good. All right, number three, realize the outcome. Release the outcomes. Release the outcome. You can't force growth. You can only influence it. So the moment you attach your piece to someone else's performance, you lose both. Plain and simple.
Mark, I I don't have anything to say on that profound statement except for wow. Like
Yeah,
wow. If people maybe say that one more time.
yeah. So you can't force growth. You can only influence it. The moment you attach your piece to someone else's performance, you lose both.
Yeah. Yeah. I
I've
tell
seen
you,
it
number
over and over and over again, right? All right,
yeah.
number four. Number four, celebrate effort, not just success. This one's going to craw you a little bit, just knowing you, Chris, but you got to celebrate effort, not just success. Now, do we want success? Of course we want success, but but it's it but celebrating only success doesn't create a pathway to success. So we need to celebrate effort as well. So if we only praise results, we condition people to perform instead of grow. So even our team, if we only celebrate results, we are actually, a lot of people, even when they're around visionary type people, they see maybe they'll catch a vision of the big picture, but they're not willing to take the steps, and so you don't see the results. You got to celebrate each step or each effort that was made along the way, and you're going to get a better result.
Yeah. We always joke about how you wrote the book Relationship Matters. And I'm like, well, Mark, results matter. at
Yeah,
the end of the day.
exactly.
And so you said this one's going to hit the craw a little bit like that. Yeah. I mean, here's the thing is I can't argue with what you say. It makes absolute sense.
Right,
Logic, common sense and logic about what you just said is there's real truth to that.
right.
And because, and when we condition people to perform instead of growing and everything like that, what ends up happening is that when we allow them to grow, when we provide the environment for them to grow
Yeah,
now rather than just focusing on the results,
right.
it creates an environment that's safe from risk, that's safe
Yeah,
for risk and honesty.
yeah,
So now people can be real, they can be honest. As a leader, you can adapt and react to that honesty. And I'm, as an employee or as a person, a part of the organization or the
yeah,
church or everything, I'm not afraid to take a bit of risk in order to accomplish what would be the end result,
yeah,
which is the result. But
yeah.
like, what do they always say? Sometimes it's not the destination, it's the journey that is
Right.
the most powerful thing
Well,
then,
and
right?
I will
So
tell you that I tell you this, in an organization, the journey is what creates culture. It's not the results.
correct.
Results can actually damage culture, and the expectation of those results can damage
Yeah.
culture. But if we see it as journey, it's a much better road, in my opinion. So I think you're hitting on something there for sure. All right, number five, and listen, I understand not all the listeners of this podcast are faith based, but nevertheless, I am. So you're going to get a bit of that faith sprinkled in here. Number five is trust God's process. Sometimes it's the most powerful thing you can do is to step back and pray instead of step in and fix. So sometimes you just got to release it, and if you're a person of faith, pray and trust that it's going to work out. That if you care for your people, they're going to work it out. And so I think that is a bit of a challenge for some people, especially leaders. Maybe in business leaders, that might be a challenge. But I've heard from business leaders, executives, C-suite people, many times when they're frustrated and they don't know what to do, they'll stop, they'll pray and reflect, and then the answer comes.
The answer will come, or even if it doesn't come, you will have a sense where you're in a moment of peace and
Yeah,
there's room to breathe because when for especially for leaders,
yeah,
they feel responsible for everything.
right. Yeah,
There's a huge weight on their shoulders. And with the intensity and the speed of business, the speed of organization, the speed of church, at the end of the day, they're responsible for every nook and cranny of everything they can do. There is no room to breathe. There is
right,
no room to reflect. There is no room to sit back and say a prayer or to just whatever it is
right.
that you need to do to kind of say okay and move on with that. So these five principles, these practical things, I think are pretty powerful on that. So what's next, Mark?
Well, I think real leadership isn't about control. It's about cultivating confidence in others. And I think that that's the real bottom line. In the business world, especially right now, you hear this term psychological safety. So some
Yes.
of these efforts, you know, uh, you know, don't inspire me very much. I don't agree with some of the stuff, but the principle of it I understand. Right? We want people to feel safe. We want them to feel like they contribute, that they're part of the family, part of the vision. And so I think that this what we talked about today and following those five steps can really help you create a healthy culture in your organization.
Yeah. So as we look to start to wrap things up here, Mark, a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
when you talk about control and everything like this, it's something that sneaks up on us. It doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's not just blatant; it just sneaks up on us. And because nobody usually just sort of wakes up in the morning and goes and thinks, "I'm controlling. I'm a
Yeah,
controlling person." I've heard
yeah,
people say I'm a control freak,
Yeah,
but then they say that in a way that's like, ooh, they don't say that to brag. They
right.
say that to be like, I wish I wasn't a control freak, right?
Yeah,
But when you say I'm, but so like again, when nobody wakes up says I'm controlling, because it's often just our fear
right.
dressed up. This is something that is pretty powerful. I think it's just often our fear dressed up as responsibility.
Yeah, that's really good. Exactly. Right?
Yeah,
That's a great statement. So if you're listening today and you've realized your help might be hurting instead of helping, take heart. Awareness is where freedom begins, right? Awareness creates choice. And so you've now got some awareness. So I want to encourage you this week, even after you hang up from listening to this, you turn it off. Here's what I want to challenge you with. Ask yourself, what's driving my need to help? Be authentic, be honest with yourself. What's driving my need to help? The next one is, am I empowering or am I enabling?
yeah,
Like, am I actually empowering people or am I just enabling them? And then the third one is, and whether you're a person of faith or not, do I trust God in their journey or do I need to control the outcome? So, can I trust God? And you might even just say, like, I don't know if I believe in God. Well, then ask Him, God, if you're real, help me here. I need to
yeah,
I need to understand what's going on here. And
yeah.
I think
That's a
I think if you ask those kinds of questions of yourself, you'll you'll start to see the answers pretty quickly.
Yeah, that's a good reflection, Mark. And let me summarize it all in basically 5 words, okay? Because
Sure.
you said it earlier.
Yeah.
Love protects growth, not comfort.
Right. Yeah.
And yeah,
Good summary. Love protects growth, not comfort. If we try to make everybody comfortable, there's no growth,
yeah,
including for us. So
amen.
yeah, that and that applies to every space of leadership and relationship, right? So sometimes love steps back, not away, but but back enough to let God do His work, and so or to let people do their work. To
Yep.
just step back far enough. It doesn't mean you abandon. Like I said earlier, it's not abandonment; it's empowerment. And I think that if we could do that, Chris, I think we would go so far in being able to, not have our helping hurt. And as the subject is this week, so that's all I got today. So thanks for joining us on Flip the Table. If this episode challenged or encouraged you, share it with somebody who might need it. Maybe another leader or parent or husband who's doing their best, but they feel stuck. You can also find my book, Relationship Matters, coaching, training, engagement opportunities, and all of that at www.markgordon.ca.
Yeah, and if you're saying to yourself, I got some more questions, or I'd like to understand better what this is all about. I invite you to go to markgordon.ca and take a look at what's going on there. I invite you to reach out to Mark. It's real easy, whether it's on social. He's all of his stuff's on the website right there. Take a moment to have a conversation with him in terms of figuring out whether you want to take a look at some of the resources that Mark has. He's got a number of 6 and 12 and 24 month coaching programs that have been really powerful, whether, like you said earlier, Mark, whether it's in the
Yeah,
C-suite, managerial, nonprofit organization, church, whichever, like that. All of that is something that Mark has spent the last gazillion years, even though he's not a gazillion years old, learning and the experience on that. And at the end of the day, if you're still struggling with anything to do with relationship, pick up a copy of his book. It's all on the usual
yeah.
platforms out there and so on and so forth. So I invite you to take an opportunity to get to know Mark and dig into some of the things that he has been doing to help so many out there.
Thanks, Chris.
So thanks for joining the podcast. Continue to follow us. Leave a review. It's important that we understand whether you like or don't like this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Whether you want us to talk about some topics that might be a little even more touchy, we're open to have anything to do as long as it's about, relationships and empowering people and leadership in this day and age, because we all know that we've got a big leadership void in this world. So Mark, parting
Gotcha.
words?
Yeah. Until next time, don't just accept things as they are. Flip the table, live in truth, lead with courage. We'll see you next time.